I did want to talk to you about several issues. One is my own background, which they described briefly. Then talk about rail, because that's something that's on everyone's minds. And then talking about Hawaiian issues and why they matter in a race for mayor. And then conclude. So I hope you'll bear with me, and I'd like to have it, a good hot story. If you guys at any point want to ask a question or follow up, I'm totally open to that. This is more about engaging together than just listening to a speech. Right now I live in Manoa. You can see the valley back up here. I mean, it's a beautiful setting with the winds blowing down the plumeria, and again, I just feel so connected. That's where I live with my wife, Donna Tanoe, who's a banker in town, and our daughter, Maya, who's just graduated from high school, is going to be going to college on the East Coast. And I know that, our early roots matter no matter where we come from. And so you heard Marlene talk about the fact that I was born in Waipahu and raised in Hilo. And I think it's important for all of us, and I was just talking here to, what's your? Kaleo. About Ke'e on the Big Island, where it's a place I used to go and fish and try to catch fish in tide pools, and just the special feeling of Ke'e, the heaviness of the air and the thickness of the coconut trees and the stone walls there, just amazing. It's a special place, and she knows what I'm talking about, and wherever we come from, those roots are really important. And I grew up in Hilo because my dad thought Honolulu was getting too crowded. But he said, before statehood, he said, Kirk, when you drive from Waipahu to go to Liberty House when 4th Street was a street, and we couldn't find parking on the first time around the block, it was time to go. So off to Hilo we went. And I love growing up in Hilo. It rains a lot there. And a lot of people don't want to go there because of the rain, and I like that, because Hilo has stayed Hilo and kept its sense of place much longer than other places around the islands. And I like the rain too. I learned to cut the grass in the rain, to weed in the rain, to hike in the rain, to fish in the rain. I loved it so much that I picked the most rainy place I could find within Honolulu Mayor. Because I could smell the mildew growing, and our first house had a totan roof up there. You could hear the rain falling. It was like poetry to my ears. There's no more totan already. Yeah, it's gone, even on old houses. Kona heads, yeah, up in the coffee plantation areas, yeah. And it makes me think about things like this. Whitefield Valley. My mom, we're 5 kids in our family as the oldest. My mom was a real outdoors kind of person. And almost every weekend we were somewhere. We were in Kona, Te Ke'e. We were in Whitefield Valley. Sometimes we made friends with the guys growing taro down there, kalo, and we'd go help them, walk in the thick mud, feeling it going through my toes. It was like a great massage. Hiking Waipio when we were younger, and then hiking all the way to Lapuahoi Point, which is beyond Maui when we were older. We'd go to South Point on a regular basis to find glass balls when we were kids. And the bagasse. Remember bagasse? Some of you guys remember what that is? Would wash in and protect the balls, and we'd walk along and find the glass balls. We'd use our bamboo poles and catch hinalea and wama and mamo and things like that. And as we got older, we learned to catch papio, and then finally ulua. We'd set our lines and camp overnight. And it was such a special place, South Point in particular, that when my mom and dad passed away, they put in their wills that they wanted to have their ashes spread at South Point. And some people may say, why would people want to go to South Point? It's very dry and desolate, right? If you've ever gone to South Point, I'm not just talking driving to the end of the road. If you park or drive then back towards Kahu, the Kalawao, powerful place. Powerful place. I mean, the aina, the rocks, the hohoihoi, the waves. I mean, the ocean seems higher than the land there. The white caps, the wind. It's desolate and powerful in a very raw kind of way. And I used to love it to go fish and find those glass balls. But once we put my mom's and dad's ashes down there, both in the water and on the aina, now it has a very spiritual meaning when I go there. A sense of sadness to some degree, but also I feel like I'm talking a little bit to my parents. And a sense of connecting. And so I wanted to share that with you because I know our roots are all very important. The other thing, Big Island, I worked really hard in jobs that my dad would say you're going to work in. And so I worked at Puna Sugar in the weed spray gang. I learned what hard work was about, what persistence is about, what working together is about, and not being afraid to get dirty with everyone else to get the job done. And that's really important lessons that I learned. Why am I running for mayor? A lot of it has to do with the fact, it's plain and simple. is how do we preserve our aloha? How do we preserve our connection to each other? I spent time talking about Waipalo and Hilo, Kona, all our places. We think when we were little kids how we were connected. I felt we were more connected. We knew our neighbors, we had time for each other, we looked out for each other, we brought food to each other's homes. And I look at today, the rushing, just to stay in place, working hard. All of you work extremely hard. There's no time. There's not even time for our own families in many cases. I feel like I neglect our daughter and that I should always spend more time than I have. And I wish it was different. I want to fight to preserve aloha and sense of place. And I mean that means a little bit slowing down, stopping to breathe, to connect in ways we used to in a very big city. And Honolulu is a huge city today. You know, my parents left, they fled before statehood. Look at the city today. 953,000 people. We have big city problems and all kinds, from aging infrastructure to traffic to homelessness, affordable housing, keeping the kind of jobs that we want, keeping quality jobs so our kids can come back here and make a living so they don't have to go live in Las Vegas or California or Oregon, where so many of our friends and family members move to just to survive. We need to do better, I think. And I think this requires real leadership. It's about persistence and hard work and a can-do attitude, saying we can do this. I believe that by working together, we can do this. It's about leading from the front of the desk, not just by sitting behind. I think we have a current mayor who likes to sit behind the desk and let other people do what they want. I don't think that's how you solve the problems. It's by stepping out to the front line, engaging, understanding the job, because we all know, many of you are small business people, to do the job, you got to know the job. I don't think the current mayor really is interested in knowing the job. We have so many complex issues. Ag versus subdivisions, rural versus urban, small farming versus large farming and resorts, neighborhoods and high-rises. These are complex problems that require a mayor who's committed to solve the problems right now. And that's why I'm running for mayor. It's about doing things today. And in the city, you can do things today and make a difference immediately. You know that. Your sewer doesn't work. Your water doesn't come on. Your garbage isn't picked up. You get pretty upset within a day or two. That's what the mayor is about. And I want to engage and solve those problems right now and then chart a better course for the future. And that is why I'm passionate about things like rail, because I believe it's charting a better course for the future. That is why I'm passionate about building our sewer infrastructure system, the $4.7 billion system we're talking about between now and 2035. That is charting a course for a better future. We need to set direction through infrastructure so that we grow better, so we can live better in the urban core, but preserve our outlying lands beyond the urban buffer, so they stay open for ag, for just being open, and to keep our neighboring places country. And by that I mean Kailua. You don't think of Kailua as country, think North Shore. But I think it's all those places outside of downtown Honolulu and this side of the island that are green with trees and openness, not as much traffic, so that they can continue to be that way by being better here in town. Now, a word about rail. I think it's natural to be concerned. If you weren't concerned, I think, man, you're not aware and not thinking. And I think the people of this community are very concerned about rail. And they're asking very hard questions that need to be addressed. And this race for mayor has turned into a debate on rail initially, right? It was about for rail or against rail. You could argue all the reasons why we should build rail. You could hear all the reasons why we shouldn't build rail. And they're compelling on both sides. I stand on the side of building rail, and I think those, particularly Governor Kaitano, is playing to fear not to build rail. He's trying to scare us into inaction, to status quo. And that's easy to do because all of us in this room have had to make tough decisions where someone was screaming in your ear, you're busy, you start that business, you're going to fail. Kirk, if you go to Ashland Riston, you may not make partner. You better not buy a house because you could go into bankruptcy if you don't make partner. Scare us into inaction. But I believe it's about action. I believe it's about doing better and charting that course for the future, and rail's about that. But what's happened recently, if you watch how this debate on rail has turned, It's now turned into a debate on leadership and style of leadership, right? You see it. You see it in debates on TV. You see it in terms of the press conferences. You see it in some of the name calling that's going on. And I think leadership is what's really critical in this race, even more so than positions for or against rail. And you watch Ben Cayetano in the last debate, the first TV debate, Keoki Kerr, right, asked him, Ben, if it wasn't for rail, what you'd be doing right now? And he answered very honestly, I wouldn't be running for mayor, I'd be writing another book. So he's running for rail for one reason. Running for mayor for one reason, kill rail. Otherwise, he's not interested in the job. And the job is about so much more than rail, so much more. It's about all those other things I just mentioned. It's going to take 8 to 10 years to build this rail project. In the meantime, whoever is mayor, and I hope that's me, has to make sure all those other things are working and moving forward, that potholes are filled, that the parks are cleaned, that the grass is cut, garbage is taken away, that a new landfill issue is dealt with. All of these are critical issues that Ben Cayetano doesn't seem to be so interested in. And you got Peter Carlisle, who basically believes leadership is about staying out of the way of his managers. Now, I believe that you don't micromanage. But when I talk about walking from the behind the desk to the front of the desk to the front line, it's to understand what the job is, and then making sure the people doing the job get the support and the help they need and resources to actually do that job. And that's what a mayor does. And Peter Carlisle does not believe that that's what needs to happen. So he's not interested in the day-to-day issues of the city. He didn't even know that we were going to exceed our debt ceiling for rail by 20%, right? First time ever. He didn't know, he didn't seem to want to know, and guess what? The mayor's job is to know and to tell all of us. To tell all of us. We want to know. The council wanted to know. He let his managing director decide who to tell, how to tell, and he himself did not even know. That's unacceptable. Or how about announcing the choice for a landfill? How do you do it? Through a computer application and pushing a button and saying, it's Kailua. No, it's not Kailua, it's Kahuku. Maybe it's not Kahuku, who knows? We don't know anymore. I surely don't have any trust in the process. Hands off, let a computer decide, and decide badly. And I think that's unacceptable in terms of how to run the city. Putting the city on autopilot is unacceptable. And simply saying no, like Ben said, is unacceptable. In fact, that's the easier thing to say is no. He talks about hard decisions. And he thinks saying no is a hard decision. That's actually easy. All of us know that. We know what's hard. Let's do this, and it's really difficult to get to that goal, but here's how we do it. And then every day getting up and actually doing it and convincing people on your team to continue to move forward to do it. That's hard. And Ben's taking the easy way out, I think. The stars are aligned on rail. They truly, truly are. We have a president, a native son in Barack Obama, who supports the rail project, knows what congestion is, and in fact contributes to it every December when he comes here. We got a Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood, 100% for rail. We got Peter Rogoff, the head of the FTA, the sub-department that actually builds rail systems all around our country, 100% for rail. We got our senior senator, now in his 80s, chair of the Appropriations Committee, 100% for rail. We lose this opportunity. We've lost it for the rest of our lives. We killed rail in '92, and the money went somewhere else. Ben wants to kill the rail in 2012, and the money will go somewhere else. I'm talking the federal money. And then he says he's going to build BRT and go to the federal government and say, can we have federal money? They're going to think, Honolulu, you're a bunch of lolos out there. No more money. It's over. We're to status quo. And I do believe there will be buyer's remorse if that happens. Because then we ask ourselves, what do we do now? For 50 years, we've lived with the same type of development pattern. More cars, more traffic, more pollution, more warming, more paving over the Aina with asphalt and concrete. And we're going to do more of that if we don't have an alternative to getting people out of cars and giving them choice. And I think we're going to be very sad afterwards. Even those who are against rail, some are going to say, wow, what do we do now? I don't want to be in that position, because I believe we have an opportunity here to redirect how we develop and grow, like none other since statehood. And finally, as you know, under our general plan, we committed to growth on this island in the Ewa Plain. Ben Kaitano committed to that too, by the way, as LG and governor. Grow out west. So by 2030, 60% of the entire population of this island will live there. Do we turn our backs on those people and tell them, you sit in traffic on one freeway? That's political malpractice. You sit in traffic, and if the average wait in traffic in this city and county is 58 hours, according to that mainland study, right? We're the worst city in America today. Worse than LA. Worse than New York City. Worse in the whole country. 58 hours in traffic wasted on average. That means me and Manoa averaging my time with the guys out west. So you think theirs is 58 hours? It's much more. And we're dooming them to even a worse situation. So our daughter Maya, we live in Manoa, but maybe she'll live out there, because we've all said, move out there. That's where affordable housing is going to be. So my daughter, or her children, may live out there. And we're dooming them to that lifestyle. I don't want to turn my back to the people of the West Side. I want to be the mayor for the people of the West Side, along with being a mayor for the people on all sides. By working together, finding the common ground. This is one small item when you think about it. With 953,000 people living, we can't forget how we're connected and how we're linked to each other. We all have to take care of each other. Or we're doomed to repeating what happens on the mainland. When it's going to be a lot uglier because we live in a very small little bucket here. Very, very scary. Particularly when you hear people say, I don't support rail because I'm never going to use it because they live in Hawaii. We didn't talk that way before. We didn't. By the way, we paid to widen the road to Hawaii Kai. The guys in Kailua said, I'm not supporting rail. I'm not going to use it. Well, when I was a little kid, the Poly Highway, right, it was windy and I get scared going over. Looks like I'm going to fall off. We widened it and straightened it. And then we built the Like and H3, and we all pay for this, no matter where we live. And we should. We're helping each of us live better in an integrated community where we're all connected. One Ohana, where we're trying to be, where I want us to be. Not separate pockets where we're all against each other, selfishly looking at what's just in our best interest. How can we live in a community like that? Okay, finally, on why Hawaiians count. I'm here today because I believe you count. You know you count. But here's an interesting thing. Most people think Hawaiian issues, Native Hawaiian issues, are state issues, not county issues. You go to the legislature, you talk about ceded lands, you do these things. It's all about the state. I don't share that view. I believe that Hawaiian issues, Native Hawaiian issues, are federal issues, state issues, county issues, and issues in each of our neighborhoods. Wherever we go. It's not separate just in one place, in one bucket, or in one side. And here's some examples of why. You've heard of the Corboy versus Louis decision. Our state Supreme Court had the common sense to say that those homesteaders can appreciate a tax exemption and not have to pay the full real property tax rate. I believe that was the proper decision to be made. It was appealed by the same folks that are challenging the admissions policy to Kamehameha schools to the United States Supreme Court. Today, the 21st, was when the Supreme Court is to decide whether they're going to hear the case. Any of you know whether they decided? I looked on the web, I couldn't see anything. Major decision, by the way. Here's why it's important. Real property taxes are a county issue, not a state issue. And I believe that this exemption should be protected. Protected and fought for. And if I were mayor, I'd submit an amicus brief defending that position. And here's why. Think about the rollbacks that are being attempted. You had Rice versus Cayetano, which the Supreme Court said, you're right. Non-Hawaiians can vote for OHA members. I was actually in DC then. My wife was chair of the FDIC under Clinton. I went to watch that decision. I was so mad with that decision. I'm Howell, so why do I care? Because I believe in the purposes of OHA and what it was set up for. I care so much that I still don't vote in that election. Now my wife tells me I'm crazy. You're papuli. Because she says, you know what, you're letting someone else decide who should sit on OHA. At least you have passion. You're going to vote for the right kinds of people, right kind of folks. But I tell her, I'll be a hypocrite then. Because I believe that only Native Hawaiians should vote. And if I believe that, then why am I voting? Even though I have a right to, so I don't vote. And maybe I'm stupid, I don't know. But I stand by that. Or how about the attacks on Kamehameha schools on its admissions policy? And saying that non-Hawaiians should be admitted. Last week I went up to the Kapalama campus to celebrate Mike Chun's retirement. He talked about Bernice Pauahi Bishop and her legacy. I get chicken skin even saying it now because I think about what she must be feeling in terms of her legacy. Long after her death, last week were people up there who just graduated in the class of 2012, beneficiaries of her legacy, changing Hawaii forever through education. Every single year. And we have a group of people, the same group appealing this case, saying no, it should be open to everyone. That her trust funds should be paying for the education of non-Hawaiians. It's wrong. It's morally wrong. I believe it's legally wrong. I'm just sharing that part with you. The city, I don't know, can do much about it, but it's tied together here, folks. It's tied together here. Another issue is kakako makai. You know, this year, the bill did pass, the ceded lands bill, that it starts to address the wrongs. It doesn't solve it, but it starts to address it. That gave lands in kakako makai to Native Hawaiians, to OHA. And I believe that the city, since these lands are located in the city of, in the county of Honolulu, and within the purview of HCDA, that the city can play a much more active role in developing this part of downtown Honolulu with the folks of OHA and with the folks of the HCDA. We should work as a partnership, not, well, that's your kuleana, we're not going to worry about it. Because as I talked in the beginning about neighborhoods and connection, how do we develop a sense of place, a Native Hawaiian sense of place in our heart of our city, which is kaka'ako? How do we do that? I don't have the answer how, but I think the folks who are dealing with the issue, the ceded lands, kaka'ako makai, have ideas. And I want to hear them. I want to listen, actively listen, and then I want to see how can the city, through planning and permitting, help get to those goals. So that in the very heart, in the most dense part of our island, in terms of population, that we do something that ties us together in a Native Hawaiian way. I'm passionate about that, and I want to do that. Finally, on the ceded lands issue, I was really proud to see the bill pass this year. And after it passed, Honani Poleona called me, and she said some beautiful things to me. That she was thanking me for my part in 2008 to try to get the bill passed. I was the majority leader then. Governor Lingle was governor. Mark Bennett was the Attorney General, Republicans. I was the majority leader for the Democrats. And yet I saw opportunity to start to make a difference on an issue that has never been addressed. The Supreme Court twice, our state Supreme Court said, it's the legislature needs to decide on the issue of ceded lands. And as politicians, we get very nervous and scared. We couldn't solve it. And so we had someone step forward and say, here's a plan. And I embraced it, worked closely, worked really hard. We got the bill out of the House of Representatives. It died in the Senate. And I learned a lot from that experience. I blame myself for part of its death, because what I forgot was the 50%ers. I didn't think about it. I just thought about Hawaiians. I didn't take time to know the issue in a deeper way. That was my fault. And I came to appreciate the differences between blood quantum and how you need to make sure all issues are addressed. But what Hanani told me was, I helped walk the issue down that path, a ways down, so that the next legislature could pick up that ball and carry it further. And so in 2012, it passed. And so it's much further along in terms of resolving that issue. So I learned a lot trying to understand the ceded lands issue. And I also appreciate historic preservation and what that means, because in order to know who we are as a people, we need to know our history. And that goes to things like the Iwi Kupuna. When I was at the city before I left, and I was the acting mayor, when I finally became mayor, I'm passionate about rail. I want to get it built. The city was rushing to do an archaeological survey, segment by segment. And Walter Heen, who's now helping Ben Kayatano, but a close friend of mine, former head of the Democratic Party, asked me to come meet with the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation. And I went over, me and a bunch of Native Hawaiian lawyers. It wasn't a pleasant experience. They called me a bone crusher. They used the Hawaiian word for that. I can't remember what it is. But you know what? I listened. Sometimes I didn't like what I was hearing, but I listened. And I realized that the city was not doing it in a proper procedure. I started to understand that really it is much about actively listening, and then following process and procedure. And I committed, I only had 60 days as acting mayor, that I would do one survey, do it right, and address the concerns as a community. So that was a very powerful experience, not all that pleasant, but you learn from uncomfortable situations too. I did. So what I'm saying is, Mayor, I am supportive of issues regarding Native Hawaiians, and I'm supportive of issues that are tying us to our sense of place, to our history. The other day I went to, I can't remember what group was honoring a bunch of outstanding women. Oh, the YCA.